Peace. Welcome back to Humanity Works Podcast, man. This is the place where we bring the sexy back to the everyday hard-working men and women who impact your life within close proximity. We want to rise above this madness, which is called black culture. So today's show could be quite triggering for many people. The title of today's show, which is a series that I thought to begin starting a series, quite a few installments, is Am I the Only One That's Confused About God? Now I'm 50 years old, and I was born and raised in the church. There was a lot of things I learned as a young man, a lot of things that I was taught. I saw great examples, I saw bad examples. But around that time, me and my brother, when we were young, and quite a few times I've told this story so people who do know and understand, who follow the show and kind of follow the things that I speak on, we were sent to Christian private school. And Monday through Friday, I would see like the worst treatment that non-white children would go through. And just, people in general. But when I came to church on Sunday, I was in a building full of emotional black people, high in the spirit, high in emotions, high in praise. But the image on the wall was of a white character with blonde hair and blue eyes. Now, we've always heard this, and we've always discussed these things. So right then and there, confusion began to set into me as a young man. But moving forward, as I grew in life, I still held close to my faith. I still held close to my beliefs. But I just had all these antagonizing and inquisitive questions in the back of my mind that were not answered. So as I began to grow, as I got older, I began to try to find the answers to these questions. I began to research different religions. I began to research different things. I eventually, as I got older, became a part of the conscious community where we would study ancient Kemet history, things of that nature. But I was steady trying to find out and understand the purpose of God. And the reason why I became so confused as I got older is because so many people who claim to have a belief in God, they abandon logic. So many people who claim to have a belief in God, there's just simple things that they don't practice, or they're like the rudest people, the meanest people. Or, I kind of look at how things work out in their life, and I'm trying to find out, how does this work? Why does this work? What's the purpose for God? Does God give moral codes? And so when I look at my reality as a non-white man in the concept called America, and I look at everything that's going on in all 9 areas of people activity, which is economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war, based upon a code written by Neely Fuller Jr., the United Independent Counter-Racist Code, I see that we're struggling. I see that we have problems that we have not figured out to solve. We have not figured out how to solve them. But the one thing that I was always understood as a child was that Jesus was my Savior. God was supposed to be my Savior. And then when I pass on, I live a good life, I go to a place of eternity, eternal paradise, right? But I had questions there as well, too. But what I didn't understand is during my time of existence, which obviously I'm still alive, I began to understand, if Jesus is my Savior, God is my Savior, then why am I in a reality to where I am under complete submission, complete domination, and mistreated because by a system? And not only that, by my own kind. So there were many questions that burnt in the back of my mind for years. Now, me being a person, I won't say that I'm just an all-out atheist, but I had a lot of questions. But there were things I questioned about the Bible. There were things I questioned about the existence of God. But one thing that I've always had was a moral code. One thing that I've always done was I was able to treat people like humans, no matter what race, color, creed, sexual orientation. None of that really ever mattered to me. So as I got older, if I'm a person who doesn't attend church, I don't really read a lot of the holy texts and the scriptures, I don't really participate in a lot of things, right? I simply meditate. I get just as many blessings, or as one would consider a blessing. I'm blessed just the same. I'm just as healthy. There are things that fall in my favor. And I don't really have a strong belief because I'm still confused and asking questions. But today, I have a guest who's going to answer some of those questions. And moving forward, this is going to be quite a few installments of having people to come on here to answer the question, am I the only one confused about God? So moving forward, I will have the Muslim community on here. I will have those who do understand Ethiopian origin text of the biblical context. So moving forward, this is the first installment, and I have a great guest coming on today. So I'll tell you what, let's get ready to get into it. So today's guest I'm bringing on is a good friend of mine I've known ever since I moved to the city of Atlanta. and we came up playing basketball together, man. And this brother is a great basketball player. So we bonded on the court as brothers, but it was years before I realized just how deep this brother really was. And we all have that one person that we've been around for years, and you just never really know the depth of their mind. You never really know the depth of their wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So I can recall that, man, we used to go to a local hoop spot here in Atlanta on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. And when we got done, we would all fellowship as brothers, and we would go down to the local diner and we would get breakfast, and we would sit there and we talk about things. And I could distinctly remember this brother just started to open up about these feelings that he had. You know, how his mind was changing. And mind you, this brother is viced with the word, the Bible, and he knows his scriptures. He knows geographical history. He knows a lot of things in context in the Bible, and started breaking down. So it was at that point I started to look at him completely different. Like, bro, we've been playing ball all this time, and you never even dropped this dope science on us. But up until that point, our relationship took another turn to where we relied on each other, you know, in moments where we were dealing with real life issues. I could always call on him to get answers. He can always call on me for inspiration and encouragement. But I don't want to hold him out any further longer. Hey, G, what's going on with you, bro?
What's good? Peace. What's good?
I'm getting a little tongue tied up in there, man. How you been, man?
You already know, fantastic.
Speaking of which, I was talking about basketball. My Sacramento Kings are back in the playoffs. Yes, I am a Sacktown fan. I'm probably the only one that's a Sacktown fan, but I've always ridden with my team. So there it is, man. I think we number 2, man.
Yeah.
Man, what's going on, man? I see you outside, man, in the sunny serene today, huh?
Yeah, man. It's, love to be, man. Nature, man. It's home. You know, it's a part of us. We're in tune with it. We don't realize how much we're in tune with it, but nature is where to be, man. That clean energy, pure energy, baby.
I know the last time, man, you came on the show, man, when I first started podcasting. I thank you, man. You came and blessed the platform. And, man, that was a great show, man. A lot of people had contacted me about the show. A lot of people had a lot of questions. As usual, man, I already know what you bring to the table, and a lot of people were impressed with the information that you presented, man. But I know me and you talk a lot, man. And one thing that I know about you, brother, that you always evolve, man. You always continue to keep learning things, man.
Right.
So where are you at nowadays with life, man?
Man, just the growth is that I never know it all. I'll never know it all. So I'll always be growing, always be evolving, always be learning, always be changing, keeping an open mind. You know, even things I might be maybe set on now could possibly change. Just like I was set in the religious doctrine and patterns and mundane practices and ways of treating people based on a religious foundation, that changed. You know,
Yeah.
So change is inevitable. So I would say that where I'm at, I'm even more open to change in my own life, change in the world, and just being able to live, you know, free in my mind. And I get to choose, you know what I'm saying? So just knowing that I got the freedom to choose, you know, that's peace. That's peace where I'm at.
When you say change religiously, something you said a few minutes ago, can you kind of give us a little context? What exactly do you mean when you say you somewhat changed religiously?
Yeah, it's really just, you know, simply I was looking outside of myself. And because of that, that brought a lot of frustration, a lot of questions, and just a lot of, I would say, doubt in the religious doctrines that you know, I was told to subscribe to, and I was really giving my my all to. I mean, all really going all the way. I wasn't playing with it.
What was the wake up moment for you though?
When I realized that, you know, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, and you're expecting a different result, but you're still doing the same thing. That dawned on me. And I just sat back. It's like, what is fear? First and foremost, fear will keep people from changing. So when you believe that there's this higher being that's going to punish you, you stay in line with what your forefathers have told you and taught you, the elders. And you respect your elders because they've done this. They've been here for a while. And then you look and you're like, but it's like, hold up. They've been at this for 10 years. They've been at this for 20 years. They've been at it for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. There's no change in any type of the promises that are preached from the pulpits today. And especially the main thing in the Black community being financial stability and having more. And I just seen so many people dying broke in the church, but yet they give up so much money in the church. So I mean, it's so many things that I seen and witnessed, and it was like a wake up call, you know. So I'm like, it didn't take long for me, you know. I'll tell you specifically, that's probably about a good 7 solid years, that I was like, man, I'm not getting the results, and I wasn't okay with having mine when I die and go to heaven. It didn't make sense to me that the white European who pushed this on us, they're living lavish and enjoying life while we're oppressed, you know, and while we're being controlled, and while we're trying to fight for ours, and they got theirs, but they're telling us to wait for ours, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it just wasn't making sense, man. And then, you know, I'm a good student, so with me going to church and hearing and seeing, and then me doing my own studying, it didn't match. It didn't add up. You know, there's a total disconnection there. So
Right.
I got more result oriented, and the moment I stepped out of fear of what my mom might say, family might say, what the people at the church might say about me, I got out of the fear of other people's opinions about me making a decision that I felt was the best decision for me, which was to no longer do the church thing.
I remember that process too, man. I would never forget, man. We was like I had mentioned earlier on the show how we used to hoop, and you know we used to actually go down to IHOP right over there on Panola Road,
Right, that one.
and
Yeah.
we talked. And I would never forget, man. You said if something's not going right, you have to always go back and check the process.
Yes.
Those words stuck with me that day. You said that,
Right.
and I had kind of been going through the same thing. I just wasn't as vocal with it, but I didn't, you know,
Right.
how you have feelings subconsciously, but you really don't know how to bring that out and
Bring it out.
articulate it. And
Express it.
plus, like you said, with family, when you go try to question people or you want questions, they can't answer those questions.
Right.
And a lot of times they don't want to answer those questions.
Right.
And a lot of people take offense or think that you're attacking them because actually that's what their parents taught them.
Right.
And so it's not necessarily an attack on them that they feel like you're doing, but in their mind it's like, how damn dare you come and question what I was taught like it wasn't the truth.
Right.
Yes, I'm questioning it because, like you said, something don't add up to me.
Don't add up.
I look to see what works. You know what I mean? So getting into it, man. You know I told you, man. I you know I have questions, man. You know these are pretty loaded questions, but I know you can handle them. And you know, with this being the first installment, man, you know I want people to understand it's really like, you know, it's based on people's personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
Some things are factual, some things could be based on what a person feels through the conviction of their heart. So a lot of these questions, I don't want people to perceive it as that, you know, it's a right or wrong answer to the question. Right. It's just the way that you understand it and how you see life. You know what I mean? Right. But there is no other person that I know that can handle it, because I also have brother Baba Natu coming on the show. Mm-hmm. Our brother out in California, he's a Muslim and he teaches. It's a lot of stuff that brother breaks down to. So y'all remind me the same about each other, but just different views. So that first question is the origin of God. Does God have an origin? Where does God come from?
Well, I do.
Well, the concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do want to start by saying that you know, when I speak, it's really to bring an open mindedness to it. Mm-hmm. That it ain't just what I say. Mm-hmm. I think it's prudent to lead people to want to go and research and study themselves and question everything that I'm saying too, which brings more understanding, even, you know. And and for the people, I used to preach. I used to go in a structure and order and things like that. I don't do that anymore. I just flow freely. So I may jump around. Yes, but the first place I want to start with on that is I found out something interesting, something I watched a couple years back. And if we recall, in the Old Testament, the days of the age of Moses, the bull was significant. And the worship of, or the honoring of the bull, and that came out of Egypt. And what the European did was, they took God, the word I say dog, I should say, and they actually had a replica or imitation of the bull, but it was actually a dog. And they have statues. There's statues of this, and it'll show men standing underneath the dog, sucking that the dog's nipples, like to get milk from the dog. To say that the way they saw Egyptians worshiping the bull, they made a dog, and then they took a dog and flipped it and made it God. So DOG to God. I know this is funny, but I'm just gonna go here. We look at the
Quite
strong love and
interesting.
affection. Yeah, the strong love and affection that Europeans show for dogs. I mean, it just is, you know. But anyways, that is part of the God word. I mean, but we go back, if we think about as far back as we can think in history, um, there's always been some sense of there being another power or a stronger power or an origin of source of how all things came to be and how we got here and how we exist. But in a simplest form, I would say that the idea of God was introduced and came about to control people, to control the way people thought about things, the way they perceive life, what they value. And I see it as, if I could tell you who God is, then I can control your thoughts. You know, I can control your beliefs, how you move, and um, basically control. That's how I really see as the origins of God, because man laid hold to the concept of there being this higher power, stronger power, this the source of existence of all things, and turned God into a man, and turned God into being like a man and thinking like a man. But I found that it didn't really make sense to me, man. From a religious perspective, from all religions, I mean, it's a lot of control. That's how I see, you know, the origin of God from that way being from man's creation.
Well, you know, a lot of people, because I think when you talk about what man has done as far as to conceptualize God, could we be referring to like the commission of the Constantine Roman Empire
That's an example.
legacy?
That is an
Uh,
example. That's an example. Yep. Yep.
so, what if you know people always go to the existence of God? Like, well, who created all of this, man? So, what would you say to people that would say that?
Um, what created all of this concept of there being a God and so forth?
This
Give me.
creation, trees, suns, universe, planets.
Mhm.
You know, people will say, where does this come from?
Oh yeah, well, it's that's real deep, because I mean you could go back to Sumerian texts, Kemet, which we call Egypt, Kemet meaning black people. Um, I'm gonna go somewhere with this.
Hmm.
I do believe that we call them extraterrestrials. I believe in extraterrestrials, extra beings that did not originate from this planet, and that even us, you know, that's another conversation, that even we did not originate from this planet. There's scientific proof of that. But anyways, there is outside contact from beings that came and taught us a lot about the earth, the stars, constellation, um, the whole nine. Even when it comes to nuclear power and things of that nature, I do believe came from extraterrestrials. So man, going way back as far as we can remember, from inscribing on tablets and stones and so forth, there's these conversations or these teachings that, and a lot of history is passed on orally back then too. So there's a lot of conversations surrounding um, these other power or the other deities being more than
Hmm.
one. And I will go into the example being, even in the Old Testament, in the Bible, the word Elohim, first word for God, is actual a plural word, meaning it's more
Right,
than
right,
one, right? So
right.
it's very unorthodox, my approach as far as when we're talking about God, because it's not boxed in, and I don't see us humans here on Earth as coming up with this stuff out of nowhere,
Right.
you know. So I do believe that there's a lot of truth to it, and in some of the caves and some of the pyramids of not just Africa but other cultures, there are drawings and depictions of beings. They didn't just make that stuff up. I'm just sorry. I mean, even in Egypt, they have gold ornaments that look like spaceships. That they Where they
Yeah.
get from. You know, they look like the actual spaceships, or the that we even use. Some of them look like that, and in different forms, of different ways. So there's stories of our ancestors that's inside of caves and pyramids that speak of gods um,
Hmm.
and beings that tell us what we didn't know. And
Right.
start that creation. And then man took, when you want to control people with the information. See, we had this tribes, right? Tribes again, and to speak of African tribe, but tribes all around the world, they had their own culture beliefs that was theirs. And then
Hmm.
another tribe had theirs, another tribe had theirs. And it's like it's a whole bunch of information and accounts of the origins of Earth, how the Earth even came about. So that's why I say you got to keep a real open mind, because to just put a stamp on things when there's so much out here, that can be a bit
Yeah.
dangerous. So that's why I said it's always just keep your mind open, and don't be afraid to have an open mind. you know
Yeah.
don't think that the thing about, again, is fear. They place this guy that's going to come and get you if you don't do, or if you do that, or if you do this that way. And again, that's control. That's control. So I
Yeah.
think we took what was meant to be pure and just informative, and those beings. I think that we come from some of the same places as these beings that will come and visit us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of take on the same. I kind of take on the same position, especially when you think about technology. And then I look back at the cartoons like the Jetsons. I look at
Hmm.
Star Trek. Captain Kirk was teleporting taking from one ship to the next, which really is no different than a text message.
Right.
So,
Right.
and just like we had the discussion yesterday, man, as Sis was saying, we only use 10% of the mind.
Right.
But there are beings out here who probably use full capacity of the intelligence
Right.
that they're equipped with, as far as whatever their biological composition is, or whatever their genetic or DNA makeup is.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Hmm.
So what's the purpose of having a God being? I know you said something earlier
Right.
about control, but what is
Right.
the purpose of? What's the purpose of it? Does
Well,
man need to worship a being?
I don't believe a man needs to worship any being. Um, I think that you could bring a lot of confusion when you start talking a lot about um, your purpose as even human beings, because again, there's a lot of opinions about a lot of different things when it comes to purpose, and even the purpose of a God being. Um, that's real heavy and loaded. Um, and that's why, again, it still seems to stem from why would I want to tell you, come to your land, or come to your place, or come to your house even,
Mm-hmm.
and tell you that this is God over here, and need for you, and need for everyone else to be inclusive into what I believe, or how I believe God is. you know so some people, man, needs that security that everyone is believing the same way I'm believing, you
Mm-hmm.
know that this is the God. And if you don't, you know join or align and worship my God, then something's wrong with you.
What do you say to people who say, well, you know what, I follow the holy scriptures in the text, and the old saying, obedience is better than sacrifice, and I do it God's way and I do it His will, and I see the results. What do you say to people who would tell you that?
Well, it's really weird. Okay, that's good. Even with the purpose of God, that's good, because that brings us in that it's to say that what's happening is not because of you yourself. Like, it's like it takes all the power away from us as individuals, from the self, if we
Hmm.
give credit to some other being with everything that happens. I'll say there's people, and I've done this. I'm guilty of this myself.
I think we
I
all have.
Yeah, I'm giving credit to somebody else. Again, that takes me further out of myself. And I'll say the powers that be knows this. And so again, a purpose of there being a God being is to take man from himself and give all his power, credit, and accolades to another being. And I can't help but focus on Christianity and Catholicism, and the fact that it was a white face on top of that. So that's a whole nother conversation, right?
Right,
But
right, right.
people don't understand, and we're not taught this in church. It does not matter how you're feeling when you're in the building. What matters is how you're feeling 24/7. It don't matter what
Mm.
you're professing and proclaiming and professing in the building, or in your prayer closet, or in your moments of praying or intercession, or you're wailing and you're crying out. Matters not, because outside of those moments, what's the state of your being, your disposition? You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
What outside of the moments where you're feeling high and you know these eschatological experiences and all this hype, and how are you feeling? Are you really
Yeah.
depressed? Are you stressed? Are you really angry? Are you dealing with a lot of hatred and self-hate? You know, so the reason we get so happy and so go lucky when something good happens for us is because we don't believe we're good most of the time, because of the way the preachers preach it to us. We feel like we're not good enough.
That's
So
deep. I
it
never thought
happens.
about it like
Yeah.
that.
So
I never
so
thought about it.
right. So even if it takes a year for something to finally happen, it must be because God has blessed me.
Yes.
And then it's like,
Yes.
okay, well, what makes you so better today than you was, a month ago or a year ago? Doesn't God love us all? Isn't He merciful? Doesn't He reign on the just and the unjust? Is He unbiased? He's not a respected person. So, and then you look at your neighbor and you be like, well, my neighbor, they got this, got that. They look happy. They seem to be prospering, and they're not doing what I'm doing. And then it's confusing.
Yeah.
Because I thought y'all told me if I do this way, that way, this way, that way, I'll get these results.
Right.
They're not even thinking about this stuff. In fact, they're doing the total opposite. But look at their life and look at mine. It's not about material, but I'm there because that's the way Black folks are.
Right.
That's how we are. We're so fast to what is it in church? Testify, give our testimony over a car and a house.
Yes.
Over a new job. So it's like, this the purpose of your existence, to accumulate things and to, you know, progress in education and things of that nature, as if that is the measuring stick and rod for someone who loves God or has a connection with God. And so,
Hmm.
since we don't realize that we actually are the reason why things happen or don't happen, and it's a cop out. It's easier to put it off on God and His devil. And there's so many. I might have said this last time. This is just one of the base examples I like to give. There's two women in church testifying, giving their testimony. Right,
Hmm.
both had children, a child that fell into an empty pool. Both hit their head. The one woman is there testifying. She doesn't know that there's a woman in there who experienced the same thing she experienced. And her testimony, she's thanking God, praising God. It's my favorite God. I love God, blah, 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 because her son survived that fall. But the other lady in church, son died. But she prayed. She go to the same church as that lady. She called on God to save her child. Her child died. That could be very confusing. Now this other lady sitting here like, so what's wrong with me? Why
Right.
God saved her child and he saved mine?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so, again, that has nothing to do with anything. That's just an accident. But again, when you have people to focus so much outside of themselves, everything is happening because of this other being and nothing to do with themselves. It has nothing to do. Yes, we gotta take accountability. You know,
I agree with that wholeheartedly, man. That's a good way of putting things, man, because those are the feelings that I began to feel throughout the years growing up, and I tell people all the time, man, like my journey and my questions, they started when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, young.
mm-hmm,
You know what I mean? A lot of times when I was young, it was fear coming out, wanting to ask questions. It was fear coming out saying, you know what, I don't know if I believe this or not.
right,
But I will say this though. I do respect people who are true to their faith, regardless of what
yeah,
we may feel about it.
mm-hmm,
If we kind of, are a little bit on the deeper science with life, I
mm-hmm,
respect those who say they have a faith, who
mm-hmm,
follow the faith, who actually practice what they believe,
mm-hmm.
regardless of my personal opinion. So I want to give people their props and their flowers on it. It's just like with anything in life, anything you're convicted to do,
Yeah,
you're going to be committed to it. So I
that's
give
right.
people who are a part of that way of thinking, I give you flowers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So who owns the rights to the Bible, and can we credit writers no one has ever met or have a record of?
Um, Yeah, no one. Boy, I tell you, well, you break it, boy. You don't
I'm gonna
play.
say why I asked that question.
Yeah.
So there's another brother coming on the show, brother Baba Natu, and I hate butchering people's name. Forgive me, brother. But we were just talking about Islam, and he said something so unique. He said the Quran don't have many versions. It's just the Quran. You know what I mean? You don't have a this version, that version. It's just Quran. So I got to thinking because I was in a group. I actually was on Fanbase one day and I heard this question asked: who owns the rights to the Bible? I never thought about that, and that's very unique because I always say this. Like I know Neely Fuller existed. I know Dr. Francis Cress Welsing existed. Amos Wilson. We know these writers existed, but nobody in present time over the last 2,000, 3,000 years have never met the writers of the Bible. And the reason why that's so critical because we know that the Bible is full of allegories, and we know that the Bible has a lot of esoteric messages in it hiding in plain sight. So that's just like today, me and you homeboys, and let's just say, like I say, man, the frog jumping down the hill, right? I just said, I'm hungry, it's time to go eat. But somebody, if I wrote that on a piece of paper, put it in the ground, and somebody retracts this piece of paper 3,000 years from now and said in 2023, some dude named Jihad said that the frog was jumping down the hill. They never met me to know what I meant. So in their mind, they're literally thinking that a frog is jumping down the hill when symbolically I was saying I was hungry. And it's something I was thought about because I had a friend of mine. She said years ago, black people read the Bible with a magical mind. You want to speak on that a little bit?
Yes, because it's funny, man. Cause I was messaging one of my old Christians. So he's still a friend, but he's still doing
Yes.
this Christian thing, and we still talk about things. And
Yes.
that's it's like you have what we don't do is we don't read the Bible as if we was giving an assignment in high school or in college to study a thing. We don't cross reference. We're too lazy. We'd rather just go to church and have a good time.
Yes.
Let the pastor tell me what it is and what it ain't. But if one actually approaches the Bible as if he were not already conditioned that this is so, and this means this, and this means that, and he broke that thing down like an assignment, he will find many contradictions, and he will find that many words have been transliterated and translated erroneously on purpose. Who owns the rights to the Bible? People might get mad at me about this, but I'll say the thieves and the liars own the rights to the Bible. But see, there's so much wisdom, and if you take some of the stories and some of the admonishments and advice, you can get a lot out of it. I think it's codified. I think that there's hidden messages all throughout there, even with the confusion that they instilled. That makes it even more of like, if you really get into it, you'll get a better understanding. Using the word etymologies, I use the concordance so I can get to what these words really were before they were changed. And I also
etymology. That's a game changer.
Yes, it is. Indeed, it is. And also talk to some people who are actually from that area, that land, or pick up some books from writers who lived in that area, in that land, and they can tell you the expressions and idioms that were used. And to know that even the majority of what a lot of what Jesus was saying that haven't been recorded as saying was not new. And a lot of the parables, they weren't new parables.
Right.
You can't understand some of that stuff because, first of all, it's translated into a language we don't even speak. It's archaic English. We don't even speak archaic English. And now you got all these different versions, like you referred to earlier, because people are trying to take this archaic language that we don't speak and put it into today's British English to try to make sense of it. And doing that, you don't bring over the culture of what that person meant. Like you gave example of the frog down the hill. So, like when I say we go to Jesus talking about the lake of fire, and I mentioned this before, there was literally a place called the lake of fire. And all the people who was listening to him knew what he meant and what he was referring to about this lake of fire. because it's in the valley of the sons of Hinnon, which again is 3 different words for hell in the New Testament. So
exactly. Hey, that's a good point. I just thought about something that came to my mind. Reggie White, the late Reggie White, who was the Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion with the Green Bay Packers, and I think he won one with Philadelphia. I'm not sure, but remember he had already been a brother that was always in the holy books, the scriptures, and when he retired, because he was always a spiritual man. When he retired, he started to learn Hebrew, how to read Hebrew, how to write Hebrew. But when he started to understand Hebrew and he started to go back to the Bible, he came back to the church and said, "Yo, we got this wrong. This is wrong. Everything that we're doing is wrong," and it was not well received. No. Next thing you know, mysteriously, he has a heart attack. I think he had a heart failure, and he passed mysteriously. Same thing with the brother Carlton Pearson, who was the founder of. He used to have that musical festival. Was it Azalea?
Zella Street. Oh man, I wish I could remember.
I can't think of it because I was working in the record store at that time. Those albums used to sell. They were live performances. They used to
Azusa, something,
Azusa or something like that.
Everybody know what we're talking about. Most people,
right? And so when and so as he began to study the scriptures and really intimately study the scriptures, because he was devoted, he began to see that there was inclusion. Yeah. And it made sense to me because if everything's according to God's will, then that means people were born to murder. Is that God's will? People were born to kill or molest children. Is that God's will? Right. So, people have the questions of where do bad people go? Where do bad souls go? But in understanding what the brother was trying to get to the church to see was this might be a thing of inclusion, and we don't understand reality the way it is, because everything in the universe has a constructive and a non-constructive purpose, whether we agree with it or not. It's just like a knife. A knife could be used to cut an apple, and a knife could be used to cut somebody. Yeah. So, and I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole because it's a very deep rabbit hole to really go down when we really get into it. But going into the next question, does belief trigger moral code? And me, for myself, I say no. What say you?
I say no too. It doesn't guarantee anything, doesn't trigger it. And the reason for that is because we do have that freedom. And we'll talk about the animals. They don't have like the squirrel, he can't be a cat even if he wanted to. He can't change. We can change and be whatever we want to be. Now I'm not talking we can just turn into an animal. I'm saying as far as who we are, personality, characteristics, traits, and things like that. We have the freedom to choose on what we want to do today. What I normally was doing every day, I can change that. The squirrel can't change his innate nature. It's going to do what a squirrel does. But regardless of my beliefs, my moral code, I could drop that in any second. I have the freedom to choose. So it's like, no, I think it does, of course, impact. I'll say it does impact your moral code, what you believe, and then what you establish within yourself as your do's or don'ts. Like those are like things that you're just not going to do. So for example, I don't believe in messing with children. So my moral code, based on my belief, is I believe that is an atrocity because a child can't choose. So that's like slavery to me. You're robbing a weaker being physically, for one, and doing whatever, But the next man's belief about that is different, and we know it's different because he does what he does, or women too. They do what they do. Yes. You know what I'm saying? And they could be Christians, or Muslims, or Buddhists. It doesn't matter what the religion or belief is, because people do all sorts of things behind closed doors.
They do. And they making laws behind closed doors, man, to kind of open up the door to a lot of sick behavior, in my opinion. Right. And one of the reasons why I say that is because when I look at us as a people and just humanity as a whole, humanity has really lost its compassion for itself. Yes. But when I look at us, and the reason why I really refer to us is because we are the most quote unquote spiritual people. We are the most singingest people. We are the most prayingest people. We are the most emotionally sky high people when it comes to spirituality and God. And yet we are the most hostile. We have the most self-hate. We are the biggest liars to ourselves. And for some odd, strange reason, we just don't value each other enough to stop killing one another at an alarming rate. Now, people want to go into this spiel about all communities kill within proximity. Of course, that is very true. But in this world, in this society that we live in, there's a double standard, especially when it comes to justice and how things are dealt with. Mm-hmm. So most non-white people, when they walk out the door, when they look at each other, if they are true believers in God, they will look at each other and won't even speak. Will have so much hostility, will gossip, spread rumors. They do the damnedest things with each other, won't forgive each other for something so minute, but will forgive somebody of another ethnicity. I'm just trying to figure out, why doesn't that moral code trigger for us?
Well, I like to use the word purity. Mm-hmm. When you don't spend time examining yourself, I like to say meditation. Sit mm-hmm. down, pay attention to your thoughts and how you feel with your thoughts, and vice versa. The body. Get to know your body. And
I'm doing that yoga.
Yeah, right. And I think you just have a lot of people, man, who don't take the time to get to a pure place within themselves to be who they truly are. And I think the people are really mad and upset and frustrated, even with themselves, and have self-hatred and don't love themselves. And what has helped with that is the doctrine and teachings of man will help you to look at yourself in a lower state. And now you're operating from a lower state, and you begin to your behavior is going to be that from a lower state, which is less love. You only can give what you have to offer, and if you don't have love in you, you can't give out love.
I like to go back to something that you offered earlier on the show, as far as like not getting the results in life. Mm-hmm. And I think our people, and many people, you know what I mean, because we know people are people, so a lot of problems are common, but we know ours is very significant and different. Mm-hmm. But I think that hostility and anger is the confusion as to understanding why you're not getting the results out of
right.
it.
Why?
And I think that's something people, like you said, they don't really self-examine. And when you present something that could be very factual based on evidence, it's something for, like I said, we're the biggest liars of ourselves. It's something that they simply just can't swallow.
Yeah.
Because a lot of problems that we deal with can be solved on us. I ask so many questions. When you look at the problems of humanity, when you look at the problems of people, is it really God's job to solve that problem? Many people say yes, it's God's got this, God's got to solve it. I say, well, every situation that you're dealing with, every problem that you're dealing with, it was created, induced, provoked, proacted upon another mortal human being.
Yeah.
So what does God have to do with human affairs when human affairs are the creators of most of the problems that we deal with?
Right. That's good, man. And I gotta go there, man. I just gotta go to slavery, not just this enslavement here, but enslavement all over the world. What is it that this just doesn't make sense to me? The way we make God out to be in religious form, and it's supposed to be all about good and love. Why would God sit back and let his children murder each other? Like, you're not going to sit there and you don't let your kids fight. We ain't going to sit there and just let our children fight. Like, what, you going to stop that shit? What y'all doing?
Right.
So it's so delusional, I say, and I've been there, so I can say it too. So,
I think we all have.
I never look down on nobody. I've been there, done that. But I'm going to speak in a way that's going to be thought provoking and want people to think about things, like consider this. And you give me the reason why God has not interfered with the things that everyone would think God would want to interfere with. And I use slavery as being the main one. We're all enslavement. I'm not just talking about these here in the North America, Africans being brought over here. Africans sold to Africans, as they say. Our people sold their own people. You know what I'm saying? And then you're gonna say, oh well, it was maybe God. I can't even come up with something, man. It's just impossible. Tell me why I just used the 400 years. Why allow that? And I'll just sit and I want somebody to give me an explanation and defend their God. I don't believe that can't be God for me, but defend your God and not bringing change to these things like that are so evil. And the reason and the cause of that is because the God they talking about don't exist. Is that simple to me? Don't exist. Wow. You can't prove that God that you're talking about exists. It don't line up. because it just
Right.
don't be up. So how about this? How about if we accept and start to realize we are creating this mess that is all on us?
Right.
Who can fix it? Us. If we don't fix it, ain't gonna be fixed. There's no change that's gonna come about that we're not involved in. I do truly believe that we do get the assistance of extraterrestrial beings. There's benevolent beings, malevolent beings. I think that the love frequency is supersedes and overpowers all other energies. There's being the highest frequency. So it's like, to me, it's like there's battles, but yet the war. You know what I'm saying? That's how I look at it. If you want to go in duality, but really, man, we're here, and this frees up so much in the mind. If one would consider that maybe we came here to experience what we're experiencing.
Mm.
Maybe that's why there's no switch that's been turned on or turned off. Maybe that's why people go haywire like they go haywire. You know, you think God wants to sit back and watch mass shootings happen to children in elementary school? Explain to me why God ain't stopping that. You can't. Can you?
No, I can't.
Only to say that the God that y'all explaining don't exist in the way that y'all say he exists. And I know we get to some other questions with that in the heat thing.
I mean, you know, it's just, hey, why do people that call themselves believers abandon logic?
Right. Right.
You
common
know?
sense is the highest form of intelligence, but common sense is not common. And religion and belief will sear your common sense approach. It'll close thine eye. It'll be closed because you're just going off of belief and faith. There's no application there. You know what I'm saying? There's no practicality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where's the practicality? Like, once it comes to God, all the practicality seem to go out the door. But you use practicality in every other area of your life.
That's deep that you say that, man. That is so dope, because I tell people all the time, like, you know, when people say we're gonna call on the ancestors and blah blah blah, and you know, we're gonna do this and the mothership, and I'm like, that's not practical. Mm-hmm. It's not working. Since I've been alive, I don't think it's gonna work at all. Why can't people burn the energy to solve problems that we clearly have the intelligence to do? And I think it goes back to what you said earlier, that we're lazy. I sat on a panel, Rob Love. I think you're familiar with Rob. He's been on the show quite a few times. CEO and founder, creator of Guerrilla Republic. You know, only the realest feel it. Shout out to Rob Love. But he had I sat on a panel called, I think it's called Communication is the Key. And we were talking about family, love, relationships, and things of that nature. And I sat on that panel. It was a brother named Coach Conyer. And he came on the panel, and he was just like, black people are lazy, black people are this. Yo, I felt some type of way, so I went at the brother on the panel. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But looking back on it, 8, 9, 10 years later, he was telling the truth. But what all the brother was saying was, we're lazy. We don't want to do the work to solve problems. So when people
we've been convinced that being entertained is and having fun, not wrong with fun. I'm not against fun, but we were convinced that entertainment.
It's funny you say that, but I say the things that we go through induce what I call the escape culture. Partying every day, you know, getting fucked up every day, you know, wanting to travel and do things and just laugh and kiki and play all day. It's you're escaping because there's a problem that you feel like you don't have the intelligence to solve, and that's collective as a people. But
leave it up to God. That's the easy way. Leave it up. God will do it. God's
leave it up to God. I can't
do whatever, and
God can't stand that.
Yeah,
I can't stand that shit. Yeah. So you know, and even if we're to use that context, I specifically always been told that God helped those who help themselves. Yes. You know, a brother of mine who studies quantum physics, man, he said something so dope. He said everybody was born with a brain, but everybody don't use the mind.
Come on now.
So I tell people all the time, it's okay to be a believer. Now, I don't want to, you know, again, we're dealing with constructive and non-constructive and positive and negative purposes. You know, belief does have its place.
Yes.
You know, if you have strong belief gets results done. Yeah. But also we have to understand that the definition of a belief is to hold something as truthful and real without the requirement of proof. So I think that religion, for most people who are really stuck to it, and I don't want to criticize anybody. I know this episode is triggering. I just want people to understand I'm not criticizing for what you believe in.
It's conversation.
But religion is conversation. Religion teaches you what to think. It don't teach you how to think.
How? That's good. That's good.
So keep that in mind. You know what I'm saying?
Accurate.
So
Accurate.
moving along, man. Does God have a gender? And the
No.
reason why I asked that question is because I always hear the man upstairs.
Right.
He been good to me.
Right.
He, and then in the conscious community, you got a lot of sisters like God is a woman,
Right.
and I've always been told flesh and spirit are not one and the same. So how could God have a gender? And in the nation, the 5%ers, which I was committed, dedicated member of the nation, the 5%ers. They say the black man is God. When they say I was always taught, and this is something that brother Baba Banatu. Damn, I hate him, brother. I'm so sorry. Brother Baba Natu had told me that in the nation we always talked about Allah, which is arm, leg, arm, head. Allah. And the brother told me, he was like, well, Allah is a masculine principle in Arabic. How could you take that and you're speaking English? And it made so much sense to me. It's like an acronym we use, to give a definition, a location, and an image on Allah. The Most High, magnificent, the beneficiary, things of that. So, the gender thing, I've always heard this he, she.
I don't like it. I don't agree with it because it does the very thing that even if I talk about the Bible is against, the teachings is against, is discord, enmity, strife, hatred, and a fight. One being superior than the other. So I really wish that my brothers and sisters who are wanted to be man to be a god and woman to be a god to drop that and say we are equal. And let's say we are equally gods. That we're all gods. Because again, I look at God as unity. When I think about the energy of God, I'll say I think about unity. I think about oneness. I think about togetherness. I don't think about being at odds with your sister because she thinks that women are gods and you're saying no, you're not. You know what I'm saying? From how I've come to believe God, again, not being flesh. So you already can't say man or woman because God can't be flesh. If we're talking about God being the source of all existence, then God will have to, everything that exists has to exist in God. Nothing is outside of God. So that means all of this is God to me. And we are gods. We are gods with our consciousness to be able to create. And
well, what do you say to people who say you're a God just having the human experience?
I could say cool. I could be okay with that we're gods having human experiences, because if we look at God being a creator or the creation or everything that's created coming from God, this source, and I believe that source is found in science because it exists. So we can't ignore what exists. And atoms exist, i.e. Adam in the Bible. Atoms exist. We know atoms. We can measure atoms. And we still, man, is still trying to get to the purest form, like the most basic origins of our existence with energy. So I see God as the energy. All this energy exists. That's God, to me, in my perspective, my belief. So gender is so far removed from God to me.
Yeah.
So far removed. Adam is not Adam is not even a thing of the material the way we have on this earth. Go back into the galaxy, space as we come to know it, all full of different types of melanin. And that source from darkness, there's darkness, this darkness, that's why I like to look at the womb. We're birthed from a womb that's dark. We come out of darkness into light. When we come out the woman, here we are until we come into light. But that deep essence of existence is not it's not even a human. It's before there was an earth. It's before there were planets. You go back. It's the beginning of all things. They said there was no beginning, no end. So you definitely can't be a man or a woman because we come way after the fact. We man and male and female way after the fact.
Yeah.
Way after the fact. We measure time and space way back, man. So I just wish we stopped trying to make a man or a woman God and just we all just be, because we create all day.
I don't know what the gender. I don't know what the gender matters anyway, man. When you can't
Yeah.
even solve problems based on what you say you believe in and practice. I just look, like I said earlier, man. I always look to see what works, man. So, getting ready to wind it up, man. I'm taking to the last question, and this is a commonly asked question, man. Is there any proof that heaven and hell exists? If so, are the souls of those who committed suicide there?
I don't believe that there's proof of a heaven or hell existing, because ain't nobody ever uh, two-wayed me from heaven or two-wayed me from hell. But I would say that this is all created in our mind and our consciousness. The heaven or hell concept. First of all, this was introduced to you by somebody else in the first place, and so it's like, okay, if I stop and examine this thing on my own, let me find out where, the word heaven, the word hell. You go back to that, just like the Divine Comedy of Dante Alighieri. That Divine Comedy has been taken to be a literal thing. Purgatory, hell, and heaven. But yeah, he put the word comedy in there for a reason. So no, man. I hear of people having near-death experiences. I hear of people who died, and they say they went, somewhere, and they got all types of different accounts. If that was the case, then I would just go off of those who say they died and came back. They all don't have the same experience. So none of them say they went to heaven and came. They all don't say they either went to. It'll be two sides, heaven and hell. There's not a group of all people who say they came back from heaven, or a group of all people who came back from hell. Those who died. These are the only proof, because I can't prove to you that some spirit or some ancestor came to me and said this to say that. I can't prove that to you. You just have to believe me and accept that, right? So what we can go off of thus far are those who say they died and came back, and try to go off of those experiences they had. And since it's not the same for all, I think that right there discredits there being a heaven or hell that people go to when they die. Because I can't talk, and me saying I spoke to someone that's in hell, you got to choose to believe that. I can tell you, my cousin who was a murderer, he came and saw me and was telling me about hell and crying for me to help him out of hell. You have to choose to believe that.
Yeah.
Outside
I think that's real heavy, because as a kid, that's what I was taught growing up. And I do want to put it out there. I wasn't forced to join church. I wasn't forced to believe in a lot of it. I just followed the suit because that was the way of my family. However, I struggled with that my whole life. My only fear of death at one point was, did I live good enough to make it in? I don't want to burn. Because as humans, we can associate burning as painful. Mm-hmm. You hear a lot of people all the time, man, if I got to go, I don't want to go burning or in the flame of fire, right? So I think a lot of times people have taken that context of what humans can put a location on as far as something that's painful or something that can be perceived as pain for a tactic of fear. And it worked on me, man, all the way up until like my 30s, when I really started to understand, like, nobody has proof if heaven or hell exists. Right. And with the thing about heaven, according to the scriptures, when you think about the rapture that is supposed to take place, people be changed in the blink of an eye. They will be changed. Well, what form will be changed to where when you go to heaven, you recognize the same things you recognize as human beings, as streets, gold, mansions? Would you need these things if you're a different form? Exactly. Or like when they say, your soul is going to hell. Does a soul burn or does the flesh burn? Right. So there's a lot of questions that I've always asked about these things, because I did a little research years ago. And when we talked about etymology and we talked about language is very powerful. So words have a context and a meaning that could put a twist on things. So I do understand that as far as the alphabetical value, the J, H, and the I all had the same value. And they were all interchangeable in certain languages that are spoken, right? So when I researched what the actual word hell meant in a different context, in a different era, etymologically, hell means to hide and conceal. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I thought about, when you look at where a bunch of black men are, a lot of black men are in jail. But again, the J, H, and the I all had the same meaning. So they're simply hide, hidden, and concealed in hell. Or as they say, the belly of the beast. All right. So when I really kind of did the research a little bit, it was a little stark. It was a little eye-opening. But that's just something I think that always burns in the back of people's mind. I think a lot of people truly don't believe in God. I think a lot of people believe in God and subconsciously behave atheistic. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They just believe because I just want to make it in. Or you've always heard that saying in church, well, you just want to, don't you want to just be sure, just in case, like, yo, if that's
No.
the only reason why you believe in it, you're believing
Right.
authentic.
You're fearing it. You're
You know,
fearing it, not being right.
your belief has to come with action. There are very few people that I know who have a belief that come with actions. My father being one of them. Like, dude, it's a lot of stuff. My father, he's convicted. That's the way he was raised. But a lot of things I'd be like, Dad, that's stressing you out. You know, you doing things and blah blah. But that's his faith. So I respect that. You know, just like with some members of the Muslim community, you know, there's certain things that they do. Like, I don't understand it, I don't get it, but I respect that because you're devoted and committed. And I guess another reason why I say this too, brother, there are a lot of people who's not qualified to talk to me about anything spiritual or anything about God based on their behavior, based on how they treat people, based on how they interact. If there's truth, transparency, and honesty, how they treat their children, their coworkers, their parents, their hygiene, the way they talk, their values, interests, and principles, and stuff that they pay attention to. So I'm like, man, if a person come to me and want to talk to me about God, first of all, you're not qualified to have a conversation with me. If you say you're a believer, because I can examine your life and I see the fruits that you bear, and it ain't real. We can talk about anything, but you can never have a high level conversation when it comes to spirituality and God. And on that, man, I'm gonna give you the last word. We're gonna get ready to get up out of here.
Okay, yeah. Let me say, you know, I use the Bible a lot because, again, a lot of our people, that's where we are. And if you just look at the description and characteristics of the God in the Bible and pay attention, it's so contradictory to say that God will sit there and put his children who have the freedom to choose, because he didn't force. I'm speaking from that perspective, right? God didn't force and instill in us innate nature to be one way. We could be any type of way we want to be. So you create a world where people have the freedom to choose, and you know the way they should go, but you allow it's like playing games. You allow some to, you know, they might not get it. And then the reward is, I'm going to throw some of y'all into fire and watch y'all burn for eternity. And yet I'm your child. You could sit there and watch your child burn. You think you're capable of doing that? No matter what your child may do, you think that you're capable of burning your children? Let's just make it literal, because that's how they act. They act like you're really gonna go somewhere and be burning. And like you said, is it the flesh or the soul? It wouldn't matter, because the soul is what created, and the soul is in this body, this avatar. So God knows what your true essence is. So it's your soul. So you mean to tell me that God is just don't make sense? And that surely can't be love. And then now what's so contradictory about it is that you say God is not a respecter of person, but yet how can you put judgment and condemn and punish one, but yet you're not a respecter of person? God's not biased. It doesn't make sense at all, bro. Not at all. It just don't make sense. Even from the own religious standpoint, does not make sense. So it can't exist even within the own scriptures itself. It can't exist. It don't make sense. Now you got to dismantle your God, because your God ain't had enough.
Facts.
Don't add up.
Well, that's tough, man. Well, listen, man, this conversation has been real. It's been very eye-opening. It's been a very authentic conversation. I truly, man, thank you for, handling those questions, man. And I think a lot of people's going to get a lot out of this show, man. And as usual, man, you always bring the fire, because I know where you come from. And I know that you know your word, and I know you know the Bible, and I know you're very versed in a lot of things, man. So I'm sure people who watch this episode will learn a lot or listen, because I'm going to start putting this thing out on Spotify and a couple other platforms. We're going to
go do some research. I hope they go do some research.
I guarantee you they're going to do some research, man.
Yeah, I want to say real quick too. It's just like we have subscribed to something without even caring about its origins. How did Catholicism come about? Because that's the baby of Christianity. So first, and that's what I ended up doing. I said, hold up, man, I've been rocking with this thing hard, like this hard body. You know how you say hard body, like going all in. You know me. You knew me then. Wasn't playing no games with this thing. And it's like, so I'm like, why am I in this? And then do I even understand what I'm in? So that should lead people to start to research and use. We're in the information age. Don't just rely on one source. Get it from many sources, and you put together what resonates inside with you, and you don't be afraid to go with it. Don't be afraid to follow what's going on in here, and just don't live in fear. Don't let fear
No,
keep you. Don't let fear keep you. Yep.
no doubt, man. Well, I thank everybody for jumping in today, man. Make sure y'all hit the like, share, subscribe button. Tell a problem solver to tell a problem solver to come on in. This is the place where we bring it sexy back to the everyday hardworking men and women who impact your life within close proximity. We want to rise above this madness, which is called black culture. Got one last question for you, brother.
Okay.
Who you got on the game today, LSU or Iowa?
No comment. I got people upset already.
Listen, man, I went with Iowa, man. Trey Moe hit me up on Facebook like, bro, I don't believe you picked Iowa, bro. Then Calvin gonna come in and tell me he did. You know how Calvin is.
Yeah,
I'm gonna deal with that. I'm gonna deal with that buster when I see him, man. But listen,
Right.
man, you enjoy your day, man. I thank you for coming on, man. And I think that after about a few more installments, I'm gonna have all the heavy hitters come on, man. And we just gonna have a good time. We're gonna have a nice little forum for the people to kind of interact with, man.
Word. Peace.
That's what's up. Peace.
What's up, man?